Hey guys, LegalLockPIcker here, and welcome to today's episode. I am going to give you a scenario, and hopefully we'll be able to execute this by the end of the episode. Just based on the title alone today, I'd like to focus on shimming. And that's using one of these right here, one of these purchased shims, not one that's homemade. And we're going to use it to open a padlock, so we're bypassing the locking mechanism and picks altogether. So the scenario is we've come across a lock that we're not familiar with. We're not exactly sure how to open it, whether or not we can open it using any other method. The key you can see here is not like a regular key. It's got the cross keyway in it. We're going to go off the assumption that we don't know how to pick that, and it's going to be challenging to do. So we're going to try to shim it. But first we have to figure out how to shim. And I'm going to set this lock up over here, and we're going to figure out how to do that now. Okay, so before we can get into this cross lock here, we're going to put this aside and we're going to take a look at this cutaway here. Now, the basic shim here is made of two pieces. Well, it's made of one piece of metal folded over, so it has, so it has handles here, enough to give you leverage in order to push and twist this inside of a lock. Now, I understand these can be made with plastic and soda cans and things like that, but we're going to use the ones that are store-bought, and I'm using that because there's more of them, and I think they're made a little bit better than a handcrafted one. So here we go. This right here obviously is the core of the lock. It has the pins, but we're going to ignore that for now. These are the locking pawls right here. Now what they do is when the lock is locked, the core is turned in a way so that the pawls are stuck into these two parts of the shackle here, and once the locking pawls are engaged, it's really difficult when you're pulling up because it just makes a tighter fit. So see how the locking pawls are engaged here? That's what we're trying to bypass. Now, one of the questions that I do get a lot are people having problems when they're shimming. They're saying, I've tried it 100 times, I can't get it to work. Am I using the wrong shims? Is this the right lock? And questions like that. So one of the problems I see a lot are people stick the shims in and they can turn and they break and they just don't work. But a lot of the problems people have are when they stick the shim in and they turn, what they're actually doing is the shim's not in enough, and when it turns, the shim actually overcomes the locking pawl, so it doesn't go in between it, and that actually just causes the shim to break or be ineffective. So when you're turning it, it's getting stuck on the outside here of the locking pawl, and that's not what we want. So in cases like this, we would just stick the shim in like this, and if we can't push it down directly using that motion, you could use a different shim, or you're going to have to come up with a different direction. So I understand that not all locks can be shimmed, but that is just a major problem for some people when working with the shim. So here is our next cutaway. Now, cut me a little slack here. I am looking through the video footage here, but again, we have the same issue. We've got the locking pawls here, and we're going to ignore this stuff, and what we want to do is get these two shims in here correctly. So let's try on the outside first. We're going to take the two shims here. Keep in mind I'm looking through the camera so I can't actually see it in there. and we're going to try to push them down the sides. So now that we've got them in a snug fit, I hope you can see this. We're going to do this side. You can do both at once, and you know, whatever your fancy is. We're going to try the one on the left first. Push it all the way down, and then, I know this looks difficult, and it is, we're going to turn and try to keep it flush with the actual lock itself. See how it's flush here? Let's try the same thing here, and let's try to avoid this getting caught in the actual locking pawl itself, and we don't want that. So let's push down all the way, and then while we're still pushing down, we're going to be turning. So push down. There we go. So now we've actually disengaged that locking pawl, so we should be able to just pull it up. There we go. So we actually did get an unlock, so we can pull these out. Now you're going to have to replace these a lot, these shims here, because you're using a lot of force, and that's something to think about when you're doing this. So we got an open. So that brings us to our cross lock. Now we are assuming that this key here is going to be very difficult to pick, and thus we can't do it. So here we are again. We have our shims. Now we have to make sure that they are the appropriate size. We'll use you. Now we're going to use the same method we used before. Or stick them in. See, we don't have to push them in on the side if you have enough room. And as you can see here, there are gaping holes between the actual shackle itself and the lock. Okay, so we have one in. Let's go for the second. Let's see if we can't put you in. Alright. Now, let's try to pull these at the same time while pushing down and see if we can't get an open. And it looks like we got an open. Alright, so you can see shims can be very effective, and if used correctly, you can get a lot out of them. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something from it. So make sure you like and subscribe and share and do all that cool stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.